Good morning. Welcome again. This is Sunrise. I'm Ayo Makinde. Hope you've had a productive week. And the realities are very, very stunning. It's right there in our faces. There really isn't anything we can do to avoid it or escape it. Even if we wanted to try to escape it, we can't. But because they're always there. Now, a number of promises have been made, and what else can we expect other than to just say, you know what, we're going to go with whatever it is that we have and trust that one way or the other, the miracle of it will continue to happen. Just yesterday, of course, I think it was on Thursday, that we hosted the Vice President Global for Google, Mr. Jingra, who, was our guest on Sunrise Daily. But when he visited the president yesterday, one of the things that they discussed was Google's plan or desire to assist Nigeria in securing 1 million jobs for young people in the country. According to Mr. Jingra, Google has all the tools to do that. Well, that's for them. What do we have? Of course, the president made his own commitments and all. But don't forget that for that promise of Google to hold water, there has to be certain enabling environments to do that. Digital jobs, that's what Google has promised. But then we also have the Nigeria Startup Act, NSA 2022, which was signed in December. Interestingly, NIDA, Nigeria Information Technology Development Agency, is kind of the executing or implementation agency for that law, and it is also the secretariat of the council, which is supposed to be created, the National Council for Digital Innovation Entrepreneurship. Of course, you remember that before the former President Buhari left power, he inaugurated the council, National Council for Digital Innovation Entrepreneurship, in April, and that makes the chairman of that council as the president. So it goes back to the states, to the president and the Federal Republic of Nigeria to chair that council. So has that council been set up? That council is not only going to be chaired, not just going to be chaired by the president. It also has some ministers as members. I think Minister of, I want to expect Minister of Science and Technology could be there, I don't know, but I know that the Minister of Finance is also there because it involves funding for the startups. Part of the law says that the federal government should fund startups. So I guess it's safe to say we are waiting on the president not just to inaugurate the council, but to actually set up that council to begin the work of helping Nigeria secure those jobs. It's a lot to do, and let me believe, as the president has often said, that he applied for the job. So, Mr. President, the ball is in your court. And the president also, still with the President Tinubu, he was engaging some young people yesterday, though from his party, his political party, that Nigerians should be a little more patient. They've been patient, they've been understanding, but they should be a little more patient. Fine. But one part of what the president also said is that most of the challenges of the nation are 40 years old, and it's not just all going to go away in a month or two. But the thing, Mr. President, is that many leaders have asked for time, and they have had their hopes dashed over the years. So in order for Nigerians to believe that indeed the sincerity of government is as it is sincere, trust should be rebuilt. One way that trust can be rebuilt, I believe, is through communication, constant communication with the people. It's a good thing that the president himself is the one speaking off the cuff about these issues, not just reading some speeches most of the time, but it is him speaking from his heart as convincingly as possible. So that trust can be rebuilt, and I believe that the president, knows what to do to get that done. Well, the president has promised to consult widely people will be asking, Mr. President, who are you consulting with? Do they truly represent our interests, the people, our interests, the young people who make up like 60-70% of the population of the country? Again, back to the issue of trust. And then just one quick one. You know, you've heard about this subsidy palliative, right? Just in the course of this same week, Labour walked out of a meeting which is supposed to hold with the federal government. We understand that it was to continue deliberations on palliatives, which they had a meeting on Wednesday, and it was supposed to be a follow-up yesterday. But that meeting of Wednesday, we understand, was with very, very positive outcomes. But unfortunately, it didn't hold yesterday. So, again, it goes back to the issue of trust. So, the people are waiting, the people are watching. It's not just at the federal level, the states, state governments, local governments, whether you're elected or selected, you have a job to do, and Nigerians are looking forward. But then in all of this, guess what? Another set of people who have their jobs cut out for them is part of our menu today. The ministers that are coming in, what is the agenda for them? That's our first conversation this morning, and we have a panel to have discussions around that. And then, how do we ensure inclusive governance? The need for persons with disabilities. You know, the president has been talking about inclusive governments, inclusive women, inclusive young people. How about inclusive persons with disabilities? That's on our agenda as well. What does it mean? Payable on death. You find out in the course of time. And then we also have lined up for you this morning, Junior Achievement Nigeria Lead Camp. Find out the details of that in the course of the week, in the course of the program. Today, we want to begin a series on lifestyle, which is self-healing habits and practices. What are the things you need to do so you rely less on medication and actually live a lifestyle of healing and self-healing? That's part of our conversation this morning. And believe me when I say you do not want to miss our artist of the week this morning. It is going to be mind-blowing and very, very educating. I'm not even sure we're going to have enough time to do justice to that conversation, but we'll do our best. With that lineup, please grab your own cup of cocoa. I got one here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for staying with us. What are your expectations of this government, the federal government? What are your expectations of your state governments? A host of them have already come up with their cabinets. Commissioners have been announced. Some of them have sworn them in. Some already have their kitchen cabinets, what you call those in the office of the governor and office of the president and office of the Senate president, whichever one it is for you. There are high expectations of the federal government, and there is no way the federal government will be able to do anything significantly without ministers, which, of course, according to the constitution of the country, is a requirement. So, in a shorter list than usual, perhaps the first tranche, as the chief of staff has said, President Bola Tinubu unveiled a list of his ministerial nominees just 2 days before deadline. Of course, the names of the 28 nominees were sent to the Senate for approval. That's 2 days ago. And they include former governors, economists, health experts, lawyers, and so many others like that. Of course, before that list came, a host of people have been setting all kinds of agenda for the ministerial nominees, different professional and trade union associations, saying that the federal executive councils have to be comprised of people with competence to drive national development speedier than usual, because Nigerians have been waiting for a long time. The NBA was part of those organizations who said the president and his ministers must improve the security situation in the country. Labor unions, of course, the trade union Congress on its part advised incoming ministers particularly incoming ministers of labor, finance and budget planning to ensure industrial harmony and all of that. Smeden's national vice president also outlined infrastructural deficiency, capacity building, funding, and so many other things. But what are your own expectations? This morning we have with us two people, but one of them is with us right now. Dr. Aliyu Modibo is a former minister in the Federal Capital Territory. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Doc. Well, you've been in government. Yes, sir. You've been in government before, particularly as as a minister. So let's begin from there. When... First of all, it's early days. It's just 28 ministers have been selected as at now, nominees sent to the Senate. What are Nigerians to expect? Hitherto, what we hear is that some people just go into the Senate chambers, they bow and go. Do you think the same thing is going to happen this time around? Although we've heard the Senate say it's not going to be business as usual, there's going to be a lot of grilling and all. What are your own expectations of the screening process as Nigerians expect them to get, as the president often said, hit the ground running?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good morning. The process of the screening actually is already enshrined into the rules and regulations of the Senate. So that cannot be contested. There are some people that will be expected to take a bow and go. Some people will be asked to clarify one or two things on their background and their experience. So that process will go. But the most important things that Nigerians need to reflect on, and including the ministers that are coming on board, is the reasons for success or failure of a minister. You know, and I have thought about this since you called me last night, and I thought I share with you some of my thoughts on that, and then that will now properly sway the agenda that the government is setting for the coming ministers and their subordinates or people who will work with them. I believe that a minister will succeed or fail based on the clarity of mission of Mr. President himself, the clarity of mission and vision. So if your president is very clear about his objectives of governance, you know, and you have to toe the line and he stipulates that to you, then it is something that will of course, occupy your time and during your tenure. The other thing is that will even help the president himself, you know, while ushering in a new government and then setting the agenda, is the staffing, of proper staffing within the presidency itself. You know, as we have seen in the past, you know, there are dislocations here and there. You know, you have to have a proper functioning office of the secretary to the government, you know, and then, of course, then the immediate villa headed by the chief of staff. Now, people have to understand, these offices may sound, you know, grandeur, but actually, in a very simple term, the secretary to the government is the secretary of the government, you know. Then the chief of staff is the secretary of the president, you know. So he has to, or they have to organize the president in a way that he will deliver on his mandate. Then you have the competency and, like you mentioned, of the ministers themselves. You know, are they ready for the job? Are they fitted in well to the portfolio they are given in? You know, are they enthusiastic about the job? Because you can come in as a novice, but if you are a fast learner and you are really enthusiastic about the job, you will learn quickly. You just, you know, hit the ground running. You know, but if you are already, you know, ill-prepared, you know, you are just there for the lure of the office, then you miss the point. Because all we have now in government is really hard work that we need to turn things around quickly for our people, particularly on the economy, infrastructural, intervention, and security, like you said, so there are so many, but it depends on the portfolio a minister is given, and how he approaches that work. And then, of course, another challenge that the minister will face that will either make him succeed or fail is the civil service. As you can see, most of the people that are normally nominated to serve as ministers have never had public or civil service experience. And it's different from being a public servant before, but proper civil service procedure, because once you go in there as a minister, the first thing you are confronted with is your permanent secretary, who will tell you that he's the accounting officer, and you are just the administrative head. And so there are a bunch of contradictions, because then you are the administrative head, he is the accounting officer, or she is the accounting officer. But I advise that, ministers immediately, please sit down with your permanent secretary, know what is in the books. Because some people even go in there and until the time they leave as ministers, they don't even know the proper accounting or the balance sheet of the ministry. So then now they are hoodwinked, and you don't know, you just, because there's this thing that we have, hopefully during this administration will tackle, is the template of running ministries is too old. From colonial times to date, it has changed, and so the budgeting process is the same line board all the time, so people need to go in with radical ideas. And then, of course, the other impediments is, of course, the other MDAs that will be a stumbling block towards your progress, particularly the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Accountant General, and then the Central Bank of Nigeria. As a minister, you are allocated, your budget, but then on paper you have, X amount of naira to spend on projects or to make payments on outstanding liabilities that you have inherited. But you go in there and the Ministry of Finance will not release the money to you. Or the Accountant General will not give you the AIE, what they call, the release. Or the Central Bank will say there's no money. So that is why really over time, we have experienced underperformance of the budget. So by the time, the end of the fiscal year comes, you hear people have not spent up to 25% or 10% of their budget, the 80% has to go back. But actually, is not the money has not been released, so that is the major challenge for our incoming ministers. Then, of course, you have another recurring decimal, which is the relationship with the National Assembly. From my experience when I was minister, one of the little distractions, the ministers want to cooperate fully with the National Assembly, particularly, if you are lucky to have a chairman that is very knowledgeable, very understanding, very, helpful, you work smoothly. But in some cases, some of the members of the National Assembly can be very overbearing, calling you all the time to come for hearings, So in a week, you spend like maybe 2-3 days in the National Assembly answering one query or another, and then the oversight functions, So these are all things that our incoming ministers have to have at the back of their mind. Immediately you go in, familiarize yourself with who is your chairman, the House Committee and the Senate Committee, and then try to cultivate a very good relationship so that you can have smooth working relationship with the Assembly. Then, of course, a lot of people know this is a major distraction for a lot of ministers, which is the constituency demands. People expect you to employ everybody from your village, or to tar the road in your hometown. When I was FCT minister, up till today, there are people who accuse me that I have not did a single project in my village, in my hometown. And I said, what do you mean? I should take the money from the Federal Capital Territory to my village or my state? But then ministers do it, and it's wrong. just in the name of politics, they want to be politically correct. They want to please their constituencies, and then, of course, you have family and friends also who are seeing you as a gateway to being rich, and they overburden you, with a lot of demands. Give me contract, if you are a minister of FCT, give me land, do this, do that, So ministers have to be very careful of that, not that you cannot help people, but do it within limits and within, giving what the law stipulates. Then we also have missed the road a long time ago where we don't have monitoring and evaluation of ministers, of performance of heads of MDAs, so there needs to reintroduce that, peer review, ministers should be critical of themselves, or even bring some older ministers like us and say, okay, take a look at this, what is going wrong, and of course you advise based on your institutional memory and say, okay, we tried this before, 10 years ago or 30 years ago or 5 years ago, it didn't work, so don't go that route. But, these days, nobody will even ask you. The resources are available to our officials is so enormous in this country, but we underutilize it. People are just sitting there, retired permanent secretaries, retired academics, retired ministers, and they have a lot to offer to give you benefit of their experience, but nobody will ask. Now, some people do even karambani like me. Once in a while, I just would pick a phone and call and say, okay, don't do it this way. We have done it. Oh, well, great, you are doing well. But a lot of times, once you do it once, twice, the next time you call, they will not pick your call. So please avail yourself, particularly to people that already were there before you.
But Dr. Modibo,
there's nothing, you can do. Mm-hmm.
It sounds to me that, if the incoming ministers were to go for an orientation, you've already given them the orientation from what we have heard so far, and a good number of people are most certainly educated by what you have said so far. And it's really interesting that you mentioned a number of things, because I was taking some notes. But speak to this in just 60 seconds. How significant is it for you? Yeah, quite a number of things that I've taken from what you've said I would like you to clarify, but speak to this one for a moment. How significant is it for you that in most cases the presidents don't attach the portfolios of the incoming ministers to the list when they send it to the Senate? There are those who are wondering, maybe that would have assisted the Senate to ask the appropriate questions in their screening process. Well,
the reality is that, to be honest with you, in our country, that to me is insignificant, because whether the portfolio is attached, by the time the portfolio is attached, then there are other procedures in the National Assembly which are a little bit cumbersome, because then you have to go to the committee, that is overseeing that mandate. So, and then the committee can be polarized, can, take time, and then the process will be prolonged. Okay. And I think that is why, since 1999, portfolios are not attached. Actually, when you go back up to 1979, during the Shagari administration, no portfolio is attached, because then the president is allowed the discretion to and his colleagues or the committee, to evaluate and see really this person we are sending to this place, is competent enough to do it, and then they give you. But by the time you send the portfolio, believe me, to the National Assembly, what Nigerians will see will be very rowdy in some cases, So I like the process now, and the various agencies have done their checks and balances on the ministerial candidates,
okay,
and that should be trusted. But like I said, the most important thing for a minister to succeed, actually, of all the things that I've said, two are the most important. First of all, the clarity of the president's mission. If the president is very clear, and also you have access to the president, because in the past, You know, there are even recent past, you know, where ministers will tell you that they have not seen Mr. President for X number of days, you know, and they want to see Mr. President. Or Mr. President will come, you know, and say, go to my chief of staff. Now, ministers, you know, and that is never heard of really, you know, because the minister is your proxy.
Yeah.
Is the proxy of the president, you know, particularly based on our constitution, the president is the chief executive of the nation. Okay. So once you are given a portfolio, actually it is his portfolio. Exactly. It is his job. Yeah. You are just there as his agent. One of those so things, you should have access to see your president.
Yeah. One of the things that you said that I find very, very important is when you mentioned ministries, departments, and agencies that the minister has to work with. I had a conversation in the course of this week with a friend who had talked about the Ministry of Agriculture, for instance, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and was saying, look, there are at least 11 parastatals or departments and agencies under that ministry, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, but it seems that some of them work in silos. And that struck me quite significantly. Some of them are set up by separate laws. For instance, under the Ministry of Trade, Investment, Trade and Industry is the Companies and Allied, CAC, that's CAC, CAMA 2020, I think, that set up that particular, you know, organization now. So it has a law that set it up, even though it is supervised by a particular ministry. Consequently, that minister has to work in line with that, and that's one of several under that ministry. So how do we facilitate that kind of partnership? Because, yes, as you said, the president has proxies in the ministers, but the ministers themselves have to, as you said, line up their own agenda with the president's agenda. Okay, this is the job that the president has given me. He's given me what to do. Now I have to determine how to do it with the instruments of state. Exactly. What are the challenges? I mean, you've talked about the challenges, you know, of working with the MDS. What are the specific challenges, if you don't mind saying, that the ministry, a minister has to work with? The Minister of Transport, for instance, had a tough time working, well, it would seem, with the Nigerian Ports Authority at the time, because there are always all kinds of bottlenecks, you know, that people find it difficult getting things out of their ports because of one reason or the other. What are some of these challenges that the ministers need to understand in terms of working with the ministries, departments, and agencies who are going to bring the good governance that the president's promised?
Thank you very much. Incidentally, you know, I was a Minister of State for Power and Steel about 20 years ago. That was my first ministerial outing, 2002 to 2003. Then I also had the good fortune of becoming Minister of Commerce and Industry in 2006 to 2007, then eventually also Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. So I had the spectrum of 3 times being a minister. Now, you mentioned particularly the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, then now Trade and Investment. Yes, there are parastatals there, and the way I dealt with it was that even though, you know, you are paired into 2, Minister and Minister of State, you know, then you are giving, this schedule is splitted into 2 as well. You know, the main minister will take, you know, some of the MD, you know, the departments and agencies, and the other minister will also take, you know. But then if you are so lucky to be in sync, like I was in 2006 with my Minister of State, who was incidentally much older than myself and more, I was even a governor before. But we work very well together, Fidelis Stapgun, you know, and so we were always together comparing notes, you know, and then, but I can still tell you, it is a really enormous challenge, you know, for the minister to spread himself so thin, you know. Sometimes some of these agencies may not even get your full attention, you know, until the end of your tenure. Now, something revolutionary happened during the Buhari administration, the 2015 to 2019 and to 2023. 80% of the ministers had full 2 terms. It has never happened before in our country, where a minister will spend complete 1 term in office without being changed, and then now had also the good fortune of having another 4 more years. So that was very unprecedented, and that is why, for some of us were really shocked that the sectors, instead of, booming, because, the President Buhari gave them that stability, instead there's a lot of, disappointments in some of these quarters. Some ministers have done well, of course, but, and that is because of the supervision is so I don't know, no matter how agile you are, as a minister with all this flurry of activities of the MDAs, that is why I'm an advocate that, one thing that President Bola Tinubu should do for us is to really look at the ministries critically and restructure them, and to see, to streamline the MDAs, the departments. I've read the Oronsanye report, get another committee quickly to look at the Oronsanye report and then streamline all these too many agencies that are almost doing the same thing, consuming the same amount, in the budget, that can be done by one single entity, perhaps, and that can be supervised easily. Because, like I said, the minister is the supervisor, and then now, of course, I mentioned to you the civil service. One area that we really, have been very lucky in this country since independence or even before independence is the pride we have in our civil service. But over the years, the service has declined drastically. The performance and the competence of the permanent secretaries, because a lot of magu-magu has gone to in the way, permanent secretaries are appointed, or promoted. So then we have lost the quality, no matter what, we should not try and politicize the civil service. The civil service must be sacrosanct, to be honest with you, because they are the bastion of stability of our entity.
So how do we go about that stability? My apologies, Dr. Modibo. How do we go about that stability? It's a very, very concerning one. A number of people would, they've begun to give a completely different interpretation to civil service by you removing the CI in front and putting another letter altogether. So how do we go about that? Because there are those who even say that if you want to take care of corruption, it's going to happen within the civil service or from the level of the civil service. In fact, there are those who say part of the challenges of a minister is that the minister is confronted by, the accounting officer, as you said, the permanent secretary, and some people will come and tell him, look, this is the way we do this one, this is the way we do this one, and all of those. So what are the things that go on in the civil service, especially at the federal level, that need to be dealt with? I ask that advisedly. The civil service is not only within the secretariat. They are spread all over the country. The federal agencies are in virtually all 36 states of the country, and the minister is the supervising minister. And the number of people are going to be saying, if it's not working in Kebbi, in one local government in Kebbi, not working in one local government in Maiduguri, not working in one local government in Sokoto, they're going to mention the minister. So how do we deal with that? How does a minister deal with that kind of challenge?
Well, it's by, first of all, being proactive. Like I said, first of all, you know, the moment you hit the ground running in your ministry, understand your permanent secretary. If possible, if you are not comfortable, request for a change. I did that twice when I was the main minister. Of course, when I was in power still, it was very short tenure, and I was a junior minister. But when I came to Ministry of Commerce and Industry, I went and spoke to the head of service and said that, please, can you deploy for me this person, and because I worked with him before, and maybe for me, I had the advantage of also, working in the service. So I am not coming fresh. So by virtue of working in the presidential villa for up to about 10 years, I've mingled with all the civil servants, and I've observed their competence and their excellence. So the same thing when I went to FCT, I also requested for my permanent secretary. And so ministers should not hesitate to request if they see that there is going to be a conflict. Then the other permanent secretary will be posted somewhere. Then now the other thing also is to be proactive. Now, the permanent secretary will not allow you to interact with the directors or the assistant directors or the deputy directors. I believe, one area of success is for you to have direct access to the other staff and make that clear to your permanent secretary that your style is you can call a director directly to your office. But otherwise, the permanent secretaries will frown at that, and the subordinates will be very scared to come to you or to meet you. What I used to do when the first time I was minister in 2002, I will just leave my office and go around the ministry and enter into an office, and then now, I meet the level 14 officer or 13 officer, and then, you have already started to cultivate trust, and so you will get information, you will get, and everybody will be on his toes. But if you sit there, you are a big man, a big minister, and everybody else is small, then you will not get it, And then now, like you said, the civil service, like I said, we cannot overemphasize this importance of rejuvenating the civil service. And this is the golden opportunity for us to do it with BAT, President Bola Tinubu. Hopefully he will also look at the civil service, put it back on track. See all the, like you said, how can we make the civil service better? Recruitment and promotion has to be very clear. The recruitment process, and remuneration. We must, find a way to pay our civil servants, very competitive, package, just like they would have gotten in the private sector.
Okay.
So then now you attract the first class minds and brains.
Okay.
And then also have tools to work with.
Okay.
But right now, when you go into our service, I'm pretty sure you have experienced this, into the ministries, you find even archiving, even, filing system is so archaic, it's so old. These days of computers, and still you carry files along the corridor and all, tattered papers, and so appalling, So, it's just that we need to do things differently.
But how about this one other leg, Dr. Modibo? How about feedback, both from the ministries, departments, and the agencies spread across board? How about feedback from them, the field officers spread all over the place? How about feedback or communication with Nigerians? Most of the time, that doesn't happen. And for me, I believe that if we're going to deal with the challenge of trust, we're going to have to do it through communication. Otherwise, we may not be able to gain the trust of the people. So when people, most of the time, ministries, departments, and agencies don't come out to respond to Nigerians when they raise an issue, how do you think that can be resolved? Because a good number of times, civil servants who have the responsibility of engaging, for instance, on social media, will say that unless they get the approval of the permanent secretary or some director somewhere, they can't tweet, or they can't even send out some of these messages on the social platforms where a good number of Nigerians are.
Yes, that can be taken care of by if people in public service who are now, say like ministers, public servants and heads of MDAs, then on the other hand, you have civil servants. And the key word here for all of us to understand is the word servant. If the people or the forebearers that created this system, didn't call us public kings or public, lords or public this. They said servants. So you are there to serve the public. And if you believe you are there to feel pompous, you are above others, when people come in, the regular citizen comes into your ministry and you're shouting and you're shunning them and you have disdain for them and you don't want to listen to, complaints, then you are not performing that task of being a public servant or a civil servant, so, and you have no business being there. No matter how mundane, how irritating, the citizen is, since you have taken upon yourself that is the line you want to take in your career, then you must tolerate, to the point of really giving the service. You go to a hospital and you see a nurse shouting at a patient, a poor woman in the labor room, trying to deliver a baby and with all the pain, and then shouting at her, or somebody has come and, in great pain and, nobody is attending to them. So these are all things that we really need to reorient ourselves,
okay.
And that is why when you take Nigeria as a business enterprise, and that is why we are losing, because if it were a private enterprise, and you have all this attitude, of course you lose money.
Absolutely.
And so now the deficit that we have, Nigeria as an enterprise, is because we are not giving service
to the people. Permit me, Dr. Modibo, to engage another guest very quickly, Professor Vincent Anibogun. He is the Director General, International Institute for National Transformation. He has been stuck in traffic on his way to our studio, but let's see how much of him we can take. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. Well, as you can see, I'm still in the car heading to your office.
Well, sincere apologies about that. We're just hoping that things get better on that route. Well, let me believe that you've listened to a bit of the things that we are talking about in terms of setting an agenda for incoming ministers. Dr. Modibo has been taking us, being a former minister 3 times in the country, is giving us quite, the background and the updates on what needs to be done. But professional and trade unions have been setting an agenda for the ministers that are going to form the cabinet. So for you, what should be the priority in terms of deliverables to the people?
In fact, Nigeria for a long time has been managing poverty. I think this is the season for the lion to roar. This is the season for us to move into an era of industrial revolution. So we need leaders that are entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial in their thinking. Leaders that can really lead this nation out of our history. We need radical thinkers. We need people that will venture into new areas. There's so much unexplored potential of this nation. We don't need to continue to recycle the same mentality, the same approach to doing business. I think it's time for Nigeria to arise and move into a full-scale industrial age. What does that mean? It means we need to rethink. We need to think outside the box. We need to think ways to release our people, the youth, to train them. We need to address insecurity. We need to address food security. Those things cannot be addressed without us seriously looking into industrialization. That's what I think the thrust of this set of leaders that are coming in, that's what I think they should focus on.
Well, Prof,
not
just
on
a quick
bureaucracy,
one.
not on the old ways of doing things.
Pardon me,
yes,
Prof, if you can hear me. This is where we always find ourselves every time new ministers come into office. We want them to do this, we want them to do that. But it would seem like we just want those ministers to do it, and when they're done, they should just pack their stuff and go. How about a long-term kind of thinking, such that no matter what minister comes in, no matter what president or commissioner comes into office, they follow a particular program? A number of people have considered that maybe that is one approach that we should look at, but how do you see us going about that? It would seem like we're just, how do I put this now, drifting along just needs, a daily bread, so to speak. How about a long-term thinking of
the first thing to do is critical issues in every...
Go ahead, please. Hello, Prof. Please go ahead.
The first thing is to look at all the critical issues in every sector, critical in the sense on how they affect the nation and how they affect the people. For example, food security should be tops in our agenda in this season. And then develop a long-term plan, short-term, mid-term, and long-term, how to address them. And develop a clear document that will guide whether the current leadership or the future leadership, anyone that takes that portfolio should continue from where the previous leader stopped. This idea of people coming in and, just doing what they like, it does not work. So I totally agree with you that it's time we develop short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans for these various sectors. So when people come in, there's continuity. I totally agree with you.
Well, Prof, just a quick one. Do you think Nigerians are in too much of a hurry? Things have gotten, from what the president was saying yesterday when he was speaking with some youths, Nigeria's challenges date back more than 40 years. But it, as Dr. Modibo also said earlier, things have only gotten worse over time. Do you think Nigerians are in too much of a hurry to get so much within so little time? Or you think it is something that can be done? Because if things don't go as speedily as Nigerians want, it's only natural for them to say that the government is not performing, whether at the state or federal level.
I don't think so. I think Nigerians are very patient people, but they are impatient with leadership that has not produced. Consistently, we promise them, and then after 8 years, things are worse, not better. Of course, that creates impatience. But if we can show them and that after 4 years, there is progress. By the way, Singapore went through the same story. They were impatient with Lee Kuan Yew when he was unveiling his policies. But once they saw results, once they saw that every term there was significant achievement, of course, they trusted the leadership and allowed him to rule them for over 30 years, not by coercion, but by influence.
Okay.
So Nigerian government, it's about time they start showing positive results in the lives of our people in our society. Okay. That will earn their respect, the respect of the people, and people will follow them willingly.
Okay.
But when we promise and we don't deliver, we create a more impatient society. Okay.
Dr. Modibo, perhaps this some kind of response from you on that in particular, when he was speaking about, the ministers collaborating and all of those things. What are the impediments to collaboration between different ministries? For instance, the president said when he declared food security emergency, he said the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development must collaborate with the Ministry of Water Resources. We also know that for the Ministry of Transport to do quite well, it needs to work with the Ministry of Works, particularly. So what are the impediments to the ministries working on that? Just a quick one on that. Another example, in the security sector, There are those who have complained about lack of collaboration between the different security agencies. What are the impediments to collaboration between the ministries, departments, and agencies who have to work together in order to deliver good governance to the people? And how can we, get around them?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the whole gamut is that the fundamental thing for ministers to understand is they are all set up to work together, because the government is one, and the president is one, so that ab initio has to be understood. Now, secondly, you say, if I can respond to some of the impediments, some ministries is in the area of funding. Now, if, for instance, water resources, or let me take commerce and industry where I had experience with agriculture. We in commerce and industry, we are the marketers, of the products that come out of agriculture. Or we are the, manufacturers of some of the things that come out of agriculture. So when the cassava policy was introduced by President Obasanjo, we were collaborating with the Ministry of Agriculture. They were giving the bulk of the money because they are the ones that will deal with the farmers, with the, things and that. But we, in commerce and industry, didn't have anything to work with. And I recall, the president directed both of us to sit down together and that the Minister of Agri should give me something to put a marketing strategy for our cassava. Because that time we were thinking of, cassava should be used. Since we have advantage in cassava in this country. It can grow anywhere in all of Nigeria. So we are going to do cassava bread, we take, even this gari. I remember President Obasanjo directed me to go to even neighboring countries and teach them how to eat gari, in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina, where there is no, so that at least we can have a robust market for our cassava. But sometimes the impediments is the money for you to work with. There are some ministries that, would be dependent. Then now, if you are not lucky, you have a pompous colleague. He looks at you as, you are leeching on him or on his budget, and then that creates a small friction. And our ego, everybody feels that he's a minister. So,
okay.
So then ego comes in. But sometimes I believe that I am hoping that this new set that will come will put ego aside. We'll look at the country at first. You have said something, said Nigerians, do we have time to keep waiting for all this, progress to come? No, I think we are running out of time. People are getting more and more impatient by the
Absolutely.
day. Because now we live in a global world that is moving so fast.
Absolutely.
And so when you are in Nigeria, you are traveling around the world and things are just being done very effortlessly. And our young people too are different these days.
Absolutely.
These young people are very smart.
Absolutely. And they form
extremely intelligent.
They form quite the population. Well,
exactly.
there's so much. Yes, there's so much to discuss, Dr. Modibo. But we're gonna have to bring you back some other time because you've.
Thank you.
By the way, someone sent in a mail to commend what you said. Let me read the mail. It says, I want to commend Dr. Aliyu Modibo for the very crucial and critical point he has made for new ministers. If they follow what he has said, they will succeed. That's from Bayo Ojo. Well, I guess that is for you. Well, Prof, let's take your last comments now on this. You have 30 seconds, your last words on the agenda for incoming ministers, Prof.
Yes, I believe that this is a unique opportunity for Nigeria to put her mark in the development of Africa. So I'm praying that the incoming ministers, first of all, will be disciplined people who can execute well thought out and disciplined thoughts, and of course, choose the right people and put them in the right place to execute those programs. If we do those three things, they themselves being disciplined, choosing disciplined people to work with them, and developing programs that will address critical issues in every sector. If they will do that, we will indeed see a great result in their era.
Professor Vincent Anebogu, DG, International Institute for National Transformation, thank you so much for your time this morning. And sincere apologies that you were unable to make it to the studio due to traffic. We also thank you, Dr. Aliyu Modibo, former Minister, Federal Capital Territory, former Minister in the Ministry of Power, former Minister, Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for the education to the ministers. I'm pretty sure that your lines are going to be buzzing for those who will seek some guidance in order for them to succeed. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's one down. Is more when we return from this break. Do stay with us. Inclusive. I've heard the word for quite a number of years in my career, but it's one thing to gun for if we're going to deliver good governance as we want, because sometimes if you're not in a particular shoe, you may not know how it feels within it. That's why the women were calling for inclusive governance. Young people also visited the president and called for inclusive governance. Now, this, in terms of ensuring inclusive governance, let's talk about this particular angle that you saw in the slide that we put up the other time, the need for persons with disabilities to also be included is something that a number of people have raised also as a concern, you know. The need for persons with disabilities in the ministerial nomination list is intended to raise awareness, create public discourse, and urge the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to consider nominating a person with a disability for ministerial position. The absence of any person with disability among the President's ministerial nominees is something considered disheartening, especially in the face of widespread advocacies for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in key decision-making positions. Well, the missed opportunity not only sends a dismaying message to the disability community, but also highlights the persisting barriers that hinder their full participation in the political landscape. Let's understand better what this is all about. This morning, we have two gentlemen joining us. Jacob Pele is CEO and founder of TAF Africa. He joins us along with Kole Shetima, who is country director, MacArthur Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. So Pele, let me begin with you. This is a campaign you've carried on for quite a while, and rightly so. But this new call for inclusive governance, particularly in the area of nominating persons with disabilities in the ministerial nomination list. Exactly what do you think should be primary in the consideration?
Well, good morning and thank you for having me. It's important to underscore the need for inclusive governance and making sure that those who have been further left behind are brought to the forefront, not just to occupy position, but to serve and contribute to nation building. We have been left behind, and right now there's even the president's statement that is making rounds, let the poor breathe. But we have been held on our neck for too long that we are suffocating. And so bringing us to the table is not just for the sake of it, it's not just for paying lip service to inclusion, but also knowing fully well that we have something to contribute, and we do. We may have disability, but our minds are able. And so I think the time has come for the president to ensure that these 13 persons that are going to serve as the second batch of the list, that at least a person with disability must be in that list. He's done well so far with women, and most of them occupy 2 spaces. They are both women and young women. And so kudos to him. We are also waiting to give him a thumbs up by ensuring or seeing that he has included persons with disability in that list. So it's not a call just because we have disability. It's a call for service. It's a call for us to participate in nation building. It's a call to give us a sense of belonging. It's a call to make us know that we are part of the society and a citizen of Nigeria. And I'm not saying the president should just appoint a person with disability who is not qualified. There are many, countless qualified individuals that will occupy this position. Let me give you some statistics. You know, globally, out of 8 billion people, 1.3 billion are persons who have one form of disability or the other. And that's about 16% of the entire world population. In Nigeria, we are still running with the old data, which is still reasonable to be quoted, which is about 27 million, but I believe it's far more than that now. We should be nearing 35 million. That's a critical mass of people that is part of the government that shouldn't be neglected, you know. So let me say it unequivocally. Let us breathe, don't bridle on our neck. And we need to be part of what is happening in Aso Rock so that we can contribute to nation building and bring our expertise and knowledge to governance, and also set the example for other persons with disability to believe that they are part of this country.
First of all, what are your thoughts? Let me begin with you on that one, Mr. Shetima. What are your thoughts on the opinion that Mr. Pele just made now about considering, you know, persons with disabilities? The president already put that list out of ministerial nominees. Do you think there has been any representation? If there hasn't been any, why do you think that is the case?
Well, I definitely support the position of Jack on this issue because I think it's a question of peer representation, it's a question of justice, it's a question of inclusion. I think that all of us want a society whereby we are also reflected in whatever form of governance that we have in the country. And we don't want a country whereby either on the basis of ethnicity, whether on the basis of religion, whether in terms of gender or others, we are not well represented. As we all know, Nigeria as a country has a penal character policy. And that penal character policy is done in order to ensure that every state has a minister. So if, for example, 30% of, about more than 15% of our population is not represented in that kind of situation in our governance, whether at the national level or at the state level or whatever level, certainly that is not a fair representation. So we have a penal character because we want to have a fair representation of every part of the country. Then it also means when that basis is also, and it's based on states. And why are we doing that one? Because we want a country whereby every part of the state country is reflected. We have a national gender policy which said that 35% of our governance and positions should also reflect a gender representation. And we also have a national disability policy which said that at least 5% of the nominations and appointments should be from people with disability. So what we are advocating for and what we are supporting is just stick to what the policy says. No one is saying, come and create something new. No, we already have made those commitments. So the point is that it's about accountability. We have made a commitment in our national policy documents, and therefore, please implement what the government already have signed on to. I think we're all excited to see the increase in number of women so far, about 25%, which is good. And I think we're hoping that the next set of appointments will reflect the 35% that is we have already committed to as a country, as a people. And therefore, we are also hoping that that 5% that we have committed to ourselves to, I think should be there. Now, think about 30 million people, or 35 or 27. Now, if you think of countries in the West Africa region, whether in terms of Ghana, which is like 33 million people. So what we are now saying is that, can you really afford a situation whereby a country like Ghana, in the size of governor's population, is not reflected and not represented in your own cabinet? And if you look at, there are even smaller countries like Benin, Togo, Gambia, in all those countries, which all of them, maybe about 5, 6 of them, which when you put them together, that is when they will even make up the 30% of our population who are not going to be represented in our cabinet as a result of our policy that we don't. So our advocacy, our support is to say that we have made a commitment as a people, as a country. We want fairness, we want representation, we want justice. And that will be done when we try to implement, when we implement the policy that we are committed to, whether at the national level, whether at the state level, whether at the local government level. Those things I think that are necessary, and that's why I support the position of Jake and all the disability communities that are making this advocacy around disability, the campaign around ability to serve. Because disability does not necessarily mean that you cannot serve, because we know that people who do not have talents in certain ways, they may actually have talents in certain ways.
Okay.
And therefore, let's see how can we...
There are those who will wonder, okay, what are the potential, I mean, you've talked about their population, about 30 million, you said. What are the potential consequences of that exclusion? If, for instance, we don't have a minister, representing that community, what are the potential consequences?
Well, I think that for me, I think the consequence is, one, injustice in our society, inequity in our society. I think that is critical and very important that we should not overlook. But the other important thing is that there are certain things that people with disability know, and they know how it pinches them, that those of us take it for granted. For example, we call meetings in many places, and we don't even think about, okay, do we have access to those buildings, or we have hotels? You go to a hotel, and then, those of us without disability will not even think about, okay, how can I actually be able to sleep in this bed? Or you go to the airport, people are struggling. You find people with disability who are struggling in order to board a plane. And those of us, I don't think about this as a problem at any time, but the people with disability think about those problems. And I think also in terms of unemployment, if you look at the high level of employment, there's a lot of stigma in our society about disability. We think that these are people, either some devil or some devilish things have happened to them, and therefore we stigmatize them and other things. But I think that, just imagine a minister or a governor or a commissioner who's a disabled person, the kind of inspiration, the kind of role model that will give to all those people who think that to be disabled means just get a ball on the street, go and beg people on the street and ask them to give you 1 naira, 2 naira, 3 naira and other things, or people who are just packed like sardines and then deported out of our major cities because we don't want to see them, we don't want to see our shame. It's our shame that we have allowed that situation to happen, but we don't want us to be seen that is our shame. So I think that if we can inspire all the young disabled persons in our country to show them that this is a person with a disability like you, who is now a minister, who is now a governor, who is now a commissioner, who is now a chair of a board of an organization. I think that is the most probably powerful
I'm glad you're disaggregating this, to the state level as well, because there are those who would wonder, is it just about the federal government? How about the states? But Mr. Pele, Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Mr. Shettima has just mentioned now is the advantage of inclusive governance in the area of better policy making and comprehensive understanding of societal needs. Can you please share some specific areas or policy areas where, you know, inclusion of persons with disabilities could have a positive, transformative impact, whether at the federal level or at the states level?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me look into this camera and look into the eyes of Mr. President and those around him and say to them, Mr. President, you made a statement that had become a powerful inspiration for anyone who have compassion in their heart. You said, let the poor breathe. Please live up to this statement. Live up to this statement. Let us say that at the end of the day, you said it and you meant it. What are the policy values that a person with disability who is sitting in the cabinet will bring or will do? Do you know we've been struggling to implement just the Disability Act? Can you imagine where a sitting minister who is a person with disability is in the cabinet? He will better advise the president how to proceed. He will better advise the president how these things can be implemented. There's a saying that he who feels it knows it, you know. We know where the issues are. Now, there's one very important point I want to make and disabuse the minds of those who have this notion that, oh, don't worry, we're there for everybody. No, you're not there for everybody. You don't know what I go through. You don't know the fact that I'm sitting here away from your camera and all I see on your screen is shadows, you know. You don't know the fact that, you know, there are many of us that is not able to see the blackboard and will not be able to continue in their education. You don't know the fact that there are many of us who lives in abject poverty, who can't feed themselves nor their family. There are many of us that don't have access to quality education, access to quality health. If we put our own person there, we will hold that person accountable to tell the president how best and how desperate we want these policies to be implemented. So what will they do? Implementation of policies, driving to ensure that we get budgetary allocation, ensuring that we get employment, not on the basis of our disability, but on the basis of our qualification, you know, to ensure review of some of the policies and that have gaps, you know. Let me give you a very important information. For instance, we all fought for Electoral Act, but do you know also in the Electoral Act there's even a discriminatory word like incapacitated people, you know. So when we have our own person representing us, our voice will count.
Okay.
Just like our vote has counted and ensured that many of them today are elected. Please let our voice count.
Okay.
Don't suffocate us so that we cannot breathe.
Well, Mr. Shettima, still talking about that, you said earlier that inclusive governance, or was it Mr. Pele who said that inclusive governance goes beyond just representation? It also means creating policies that address the needs and rights of persons with disabilities. How, in your opinion, can we push for disability-inclusive policies and programs at the highest level of government, as you said the other time, be it federal level or the states, all 36 of them?
Well, I think that the first one is really even the current national policy on disability that we have. We know that we have there's a 5 years grace period, which means that by January next year, that policy should have been in place. But I have not really seen any effort in order to ensure that policy is fully implemented. And I think that having a minister or a governor or a commissioner and others in that kind of place will help us. So if you look at the policy, there are a number of things. For example, access to buildings. You know, this is a basic thing. So imagine you have a minister who goes to the federal cabinet meeting, and a person has a physical disability and is not able to, or he or she is not able to get into the building. You can just imagine the kind of consciousness it's going to create in the minds of everyone in Aso Rock, because everyone will now begin to think that, oh, is that the experience of these people that we are going through until when we call to for meetings and other things? Or imagine going to an airport and then you see someone with disability trying to get on a plane and cannot get onto that plane. Now, you can just imagine the minister trying to go to Lagos from Abuja, but cannot get on the plane because there is no possibility. So that kind of consciousness that it will really create are the things that have been provided for in our own national policy. Around education, for example, you can imagine people going into universities and other things. They don't have access to brailles. They cannot be easily admitted into universities. They don't have, somebody has to help them, of course, to get into the classroom. Somebody has to help them in order to read the document that they have to read and other things. So there are a number of policies. For me, the starting point is how do we even ensure that our National Disability Act that have been in place now for about 4.5 years. How do we ensure that now we begin the process of implementing those policies? Okay. And so that by next January next year, then it becomes an enforceable act. So that anybody who violates any of those things, either in terms of education, whether in terms of building, whether in terms of healthcare, whether in terms of employment, all those people will now be held accountable because that's what the Act says. Okay. So for me, the starting bedrock of everything is the national policy itself, and how do we ensure that that national policy is implemented and enforced as from January of next year.
Well, Mr. Pele, I think it was Mr. Shetima that raised the issue about the National Assembly the other time. So I'm just wondering how you think we can engage the National Assembly also in terms of this inclusive governance, particularly with a bias for persons with disabilities. How do you see that happening? The National Assembly made that law that you said you have referenced the other time. If those laws that are made by the National Assembly aren't being implemented, isn't that a waste of resources? So how do you think we can engage the National Assembly themselves to the point that they can say, okay, you know what, we see this gap, let's fill it?
Well, we are doing that in our own small way, but there's a lot more to be done. We recognize the entry point of getting the attention of these legislators. During the induction by the Legislative Institute, I was one of the speakers, and I focused on inclusion, getting them to understand legislative inclusion. The current Chief of Staff started a good work by ensuring and inaugurating the Committee for Persons with Disability. Every legislator needs to be aware of the dividends of democracy that they will bring when they pursue an inclusive agenda. So how do we do that? Number one is strategic engagement. We've written to the Senate President. Unfortunately, sometimes, they get inundated with all kinds of requests and letters, and they don't process some on time, but I believe that they will, So we've written to the Senate President. We want to at least have a sit down with him, not for optics sake, but to really discuss concrete issues. Okay. We've also written to the Speaker of the House. Hopefully, when we get a reply, we'll be able to sit down with them. But there's also something that we have proposed to them, which I believe if the Senate President is watching, please assent to those things and let's see how we can do it. We proposed to them to give them sign language interpreter at our own cost. We are not asking the National Assembly to pay them salary. We will pay them salary. We already have that in one of our projects. We want to ensure that the plenary is truly inclusive, because there are over 7 to 8 million Nigerians that are watching them, not hearing them, not knowing what they are saying. So let's begin by having that opportunity to introduce sign language. So
well, most certainly,
training them, giving them information.
Yeah. Well, my sincere apologies. We just ran out of time. I'm sorry I cut you, but you can quickly land on that point, and then before we let you go.
Okay, so let's make sure that we engage them, but also new committees have been formed. You know, I would propose a twin-track approach where every committee has an element of disability inclusion. Every committee, you know, and then a standalone committee for disability. The same thing should be applicable in the Senate committees. You know, so we will continue to engage with all these committees and all the legislative arm. The Legislative Institute, my good friend the DG, has opened his door. I'm going to speak in their conference on inclusion, you know, West African Conference on inclusion. You know, so continuous engagement, making sure we implement, making sure we sustain the effort, and at the end of the day, by his grace, we will see a truly inclusive legislative assembly.
Okay. Thank you so much for that and several other information that you've given us this morning. Jacob Pele is co-founder and CEO of TAF Africa, as well as Kole Shetima, who is country director, MacArthur Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you very much
for having
us as well.
When we return, we're still talking inclusion. What does that mean this time around? Join us, we'll be right back.
Your love is so amazing.
Payable on death. Who's going to get paid? What does that mean, really? I mean, some are seeing that for the first time, even though there's been a lot of uproar on that on social media lately. Payable on death. Nigerians are clamoring for the inclusion. You know, I talked about inclusion the other time, of this option by financial institutions. Many of them believe that that would serve as a means of ensuring that the monies belonging to them are paid to named persons directly upon their demise. Yes, now you have an idea of what payable on death, you know, means. Unfortunately, there's no light at the end of the tunnel with respect to the introduction of that concept. But today we have someone from FBN Quest trustees to shed light on this all-important topic, payable on death, and the other available options in Nigeria. Rotimi Obende is head private trust, FBN Quest trustees. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Generally, when people hear payable on death, it sounds like, is it the death that is going to get paid? I mean, I can understand payable on request. You know what? Payable on death. What in the universe does that mean? You know, but at least there is some idea. But please, for you probably understand it better, perhaps a little more professionally. What does it mean?
Yeah, so I'll try as much as possible to break it down so that our viewers and listeners will understand what we're saying. So I operate an account, let's say, with First Bank. I then walk to that branch where the account is and tell them that I want a condition attached to that account, which is the POD, payable on death. What it then means is that if I pass away, anybody I have named as a beneficiary in that account automatically walks into the bank, can't decide to operate that same account, but the name would then be changed from my own name to his name or her name. So what that gives you is that the funds or monies I have in that account automatically moves to that person. That's what payable on death simply means.
I'm wondering, you know, why, you know, you think Nigerians want that implemented? Because I would have thought that the will answers that among several others. So why do you think people want that implemented in Nigeria?
So it's an easy way to operate that account, really, because if you have a will, which we recommend that you should have, even if it's a simple one, it goes through a process that is called probate. And so you first have to prove the source of the fund. It takes time. Okay. Now, people are not patient with the time, because you're looking at maybe a minimum of 6 to 9 months or even a year. If the will is not contested, you can have that. But if the will is contested, it then takes a longer period. Now, within that period, you're not able to access funds in the bank. You're not able to access cash. So people are opting or clamoring for payable on death, so that whatever happens to the owner of the account, they can then begin to have access to the funds and then spend it the way they like. So that's why people are generally asking. They want to be able to avoid that entire probate process and get cash easily when they need it.
Forgive me, this is not perhaps one of the questions that I should be asking. I'm pretty sure it's infused somewhere, but let me just be specific on this one. What are the experiences people have had? Are there bank accounts that are not accessible anymore simply because the owner of the account died? Has that been a practice in the country over the years?
So it's not only in the country, it's also outside the country. The UK government, for example, put out, I've forgotten the exact amount now, where funds belonging to even Nigerians Nigerians have not been able to access those funds.
You don't know the exact amount?
I've forgotten the exact amount.
Around?
It will run into a few millions, and that's people not being able to access it for whatever reasons.
Wow.
The CBN some time back was looking at borrowing from accounts belonging to deceased person, because the supposed beneficiaries have not been able to access those accounts. So it's clear.
That also runs into millions, billions?
It runs into, if not even trillions.
Trillions?
By the way, yes. And so you have funds that are trapped in the banks. Now, the unfortunate thing about the funds is that once the account becomes dormant, no interest is earned on those accounts. So nothing basically happens on those accounts. Now, one way that people think they can avoid all of that is by having the POD that we're talking about. But there are better tools, there are better options that I think people should start to embrace and start to even clamor for.
Okay. So, are there any rules currently in place for this POD?
Unfortunately, the CBN has said that it is not something they are considering, and so because of that, there are basically no rules. At least in Nigeria, there are no rules. Outside Nigeria, there are specific rules as to when somebody, for example, approaches the banks and says that an account holder has passed on. And so you first have to produce the death certificate of the deceased person and also produce your own means of identification. Those things are, then there are other intricacies involved really in how the POD is structured in the first place outside the country. So it's important also that people get to understand that.
Very, very complex. I mean, it's so easy to produce a death certificate.
Those are things that, for me personally, and for us that are professionals at FBN Quest Trustees, we do not encourage our clients to even think about it, because you have structures that would accommodate whatever I think is better structures that would even benefit the person. Because like you said, anybody can produce a death certificate. People can lobby in Nigeria to be the first person to get that death certificate. So it's not something that we think is exciting from our own end.
Even worse, you can just kidnap someone and produce a death certificate. Anyway, this other one, since it's not applicable in Nigeria at the moment, as you said, what are the options?
Best option, particularly for just sitting from an FBN Quest trustee's perspective, is that you have a trust. A trust arrangement is where you go to a trustee company like FBN Quest and says that I want to create an arrangement that benefits me as the primary beneficiary, and then every other person I can then name under the trust arrangement. Now you fund that trust arrangement. So let me make it very basic. So I have cash. I probably cash that I've saved somewhere. I then give it to FBN Quest trustees to manage for me. FBN Quest trustees would then ask me, what are the conditions under which funds will be paid or even invested? It's captured in a document known as a trust deed. Trust deed is binding on me, FBN Quest trustees, and also on you, the creator of the trust arrangement. Now, the beauty of a trust arrangement is that it doesn't go through probate, which is what people that are clamoring for POD are asking for. What is also important with a trust arrangement is that you can't decide when each beneficiary should enjoy benefits. So, for example, I can say that when my first child gets 20 to 25, you can give him 5% of whatever benefit. I can use that trust arrangement that I've created for the education of my beneficiaries. I can decide that on a monthly basis, trustee, give my wife 500,000 naira as monthly allowance for the rest of her life. I can decide that on every 2 years, replace the car that she uses. In a POD, you can't do that. You can't set those conditions. I can decide in a trust arrangement that if any of my kids come up with brilliant ideas, so they developed an app, but they don't have the funds, the trustee, FBN Quest trustees, can't finance that project.
So it doesn't even wait until the fellow dies?
No, it doesn't wait. That's why if you create a living trust, it doesn't wait. Trust is activated in the lifetime of the account holder.
And it continues
after that because you have a document known as a trust deed that the trustee, FBN Quest trustees, would follow. And you have other parties that can monitor FBN Quest trustees to ensure that we are carrying out our roles and our responsibilities.
Interesting. You've mentioned a few ideas, but what are the benefits? Okay, let me assume that the fact that it can be activated while the fellow was alive is one of the benefits?
Correct.
What are the others?
So the second most important benefit is that it doesn't go through probate. And so because it doesn't go through probate, you're looking at saving some inheritance costs. A third benefit is that it is private and confidential. So people do not know, apart from beneficiaries, other people do not know the exact content of what the trust deed is. So for example, if you check the internet now and just check for some popular people that you know their wills, you see the details, you see what each beneficiary is getting. In a trust arrangement, that can never happen. So for example, you can also check the internet, Michael Jackson's trust. You will never find the details of that trust arrangement. So trust is a private, confidential arrangement. It is flexible, highly flexible. I can make changes in my lifetime. I can make amendments. It is governed by a legal document known as the trust deed. This gives enough benefit. You can invest funds in your trust arrangement that earns interest. You can include properties. You can set incentives for your children if you want them to perform very well in school, or if you want them to perform in life. You can actually set incentives that will boost them.
I was going to ask you if you can put a property on trust.
Correct.
You mentioned it, but
yeah.
Okay. Talk to us a little more about that, because there are those who would rather invest properties than cash.
There are two ways that you can do that in a trust arrangement. One is once you have created the trust and you want to buy properties, you then buy in the name of the trust. So for example, I have a trust, Rotimi Obende Trust. If I want to buy a property, I'm not going to buy the property in my name, Rotimi Obende. I'll buy it in the name of the trust. Now, what that gives to me is in future, my children cannot even decide that they want to fight over the property because in the first place, it doesn't appear as if I own it. It is owned by a trust arrangement. Creditors cannot also fight over those properties. Legally speaking, those properties do not belong to me. They belong to a trust created by
Sounds
me.
like it's a way of hiding away money.
No, so it's a way of hiding, I would say it's a way of hiding and protecting yourself from the outside. These days you see a lot of people, I know that people get kidnapped because they believe that they have lots of wealth.
Yeah.
It's a way of shielding yourself from the limelight, not because you want to steal money or you want to embezzle funds. No, you want to protect yourself. Let me just quickly give you this quick example about Michael Jackson. All of the assets that a lot of us thought that Michael Jackson owned were not owned by him. They were owned by Michael Jackson's trust. As a matter of fact, Michael Jackson died broke. However, Michael Jackson's trust was worth more than what he himself was owing creditors. So you can create a trust not for fraudulent activities, but to protect yourself and shield yourself from the public.
Interesting. So who can set up a trust, and what is the role of your organization?
So the role of my organization is to help you structure, provide advisory services, help you with the structuring, help you with the drafting of the trust deed, which I said is the legal document that binds us, and also then implement the contents of the trust deed. Now, who can set up a trust? I would say anybody that is looking at long term. You are acquiring assets today for who? Your children, your spouse. How do you want them to enjoy those benefits? What time frame are you looking at? What costs are you trying to save for your estate? So anybody that is futuristic, looking at the future, anyone that has assets, might not be large assets, but you believe that you want your children to be able to have access to them at specific period of time, should actually be looking at a trust arrangement.
Is there a minimum amount to open the trust with?
So there is really no minimum amount, because it then depends on the kind of trust that you are looking at. There are different types of trust, from education trust, which basically concerns the education, tuition, of children, or even yourself if you are looking at studying abroad. So it depends on what you are looking at as an objective. So there's also investment trust. There are even trusts that relates to retirement, for example. There are trusts that relates to healthcare needs. So it depends on the nature of the trust you are creating and the objectives for which the trust is being created.
Some would also wonder whether it is something that can produce some kind of interest. Is this something that yields interest for the people?
Oh yes. Your trust, if you have cash in the trust arrangement, is invested to generate a return. If you've bought properties in the name of the trustee of Banquest trustees would help with the management, and rental income comes into the trust, which is then invested, and the trust continues to grow.
I assume there is a contact online, maybe a website or something, because I'm very sure that there are tons of other questions a number of people have that I can't ask.
I agree with you. You can, on all social media platforms at FBN Quest. You can also reach us on our phone number 080-54-000-299. I'll take that again, 080-54-000-299. WhatsApp and calls are welcome.
Okay, so FBN Quest, spell it FBN Quest. Okay, well, thank you so much this morning for this education. I'm pretty sure that you're going to be very busy this week. Rotimi Obende, Head Private Trusts, FBN Quest Trustees. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so now you know what payable on death is. There's more when we return. For the living, please stay with us.
Shake body. See, I promise you, you go chop money.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Well, that's the next item, and that song. Anyway, we'll talk about that one later. Junior Achievement Nigeria. Well, they're here again. Well, it's actually a member of Junior Achievement Worldwide, delivering practical, experiential, hands-on programs in its 4 core pillars of financial literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship and digital literacy to young people between ages 5 and 27. How come I didn't know about this when I was 5? But anyway, they're going to tell me whether it's too late. Oh, I know why. Because it started in 1999 and I was way beyond 5 at the time. And ever since has reached over 1 million students in all 36 states of the country including the FCT. One of the programs it implements is the Lead Camp for Girls, which we are here to talk about today. We have with us Jennifer Ubo, who is Lead External Communications at Union Bank. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
But you're not the news. The news is right here on my right. Chiamaka Moses is a 2023 Lead Camp participant. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we also have the Program Officer, Junior Achievement Nigeria, Kilali David West. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Some will be hearing this for the first time. Right?
Yes.
Good. So, primary one. Tell us about Jan Nigeria Lead Camp.
Okay, so Lead Camp is one of our major programs that we have at Junior Achievement Nigeria. It is a program based on women empowerment. Okay. And this is a program where girls, its aim is to make young girls become high achieving female leaders. And this used to be a fully residential camp. It used to be 5 days where girls from all over the country would stay in Lagos and attend these workshops. But then because of COVID-19, it became a fully virtual program. Throughout this camp, the girls get to do practical workshops, like leadership workshops, but they also get to hear from panel discussions from leading women in the public and private sector. And they also get to understand about key areas of their development, such as health, financial literacy, and career plans. And since then, we've had amazing hosts and amazing guests, and we always look forward to always implementing this program to better young girls across the country.
Chiamaka, how would you describe your experience at the Lead Camp?
It was exciting. Right? I learned a lot. They invited phenomenal women whose works resonate with success to speak to us. So yeah, it was very interesting. It was wonderful.
Describe interesting. Interesting is like saying, I watched a movie, and the movie was exciting.
It was insightful, it was inspirational, it was just wonderful.
Was it anything near what you expected?
It was even more than I expected. I learned even more than what I expected to have achieved.
For instance, you don't know how to manage money.
Yes, financial literacy.
Okay, in what way? What are the things that came to you anew? Emotional
intelligence. That was one topic, and that's something I do not have as a person, right? So I was learning it all anew, and it was something I hope to implement in my life.
So before, you're not the same person, but now. Okay. Well, let me ask you, Ms. Uwo, you work with an organization that is supporting Jan Lead Camp. Why? For how long has this relationship been on?
Thank you. So for us at Union Bank, SDG5, which is gender equality, is one of the key pillars that we are particularly passionate about and that we actively contribute towards. We have partnered with Lead Camp for 9 consecutive years now, and I must say that we are pleased with the impact of the beneficiaries over the years. I mean, Chiamaka is proof, she's one of the beneficiaries. We've had interesting events over the 9 consecutive years, and in that time we can see the clear track record, we can see the clear impact on the beneficiaries, and that's why we continue to support and partner with Jan on Lead Camp.
What's the experience been for the organization?
So, like I said, SDG5 is one of our core pillars. So through Lead Camp, we're able to empower rich young girls aged 5 to 15 across the nation. So it expands our scope of influence across the nation.
Well, the reason I asked that, I mean, you said you've done it for 9 years.
For 9 consecutive years, yes.
It's only natural to ask what the impact has been. How has that played on your brand over the years?
Genuinely, it just helps us reinforce our commitments to enabling success for women. So that's our own contribution to achieving the sustainable development goals.
Okay. So this year's Lead Camp, Kilali, marked how many years?
22. 22 years. So to put it in perspective, my brother is 21 currently, so it's like as old as him. So yes, 22 years it's been going on.
Almost as old as our First Republic.
Yeah. Kind of. Jan has been in existence since 1999.
So, but why that target of 5 to 27 years now? Was that how it started?
Well, like I mentioned, it started as a residential program, specifically targeted to SS2 students in secondary schools. Originally, it was also to the students taking our flagship GA company program. So the female executives of the student companies would do this program. And it was specifically targeted for SS2 girls because you're about to go into your last year of secondary school. You have to start asking yourself certain questions about what you want to be when in your career, your courses of study. So this program was specifically designed to make sure that these girls have already started doing leadership positions, maybe in the J company program, or maybe as prefects, or maybe they haven't had any leadership experience at all. They have the courage and the confidence and the skills to implement that throughout their educational careers and also throughout their work careers in the future.
Well, it would seem like that has been expanded now.
Yes, it has been expanded. We have expanded it to more states. We've also expanded it to a wider age range for even students in junior secondary to even people. We've had online participants that even are people who are in university as well, because this message about women empowerment touches all ages. So it started out as like a target demographic, and now we look forward to expanding it to more people as well.
But how do you disaggregate? I'm assuming that, because the 28-year-old, the 27-year-old or 26-year-old has a different set of needs from the 15-year-old or the 13-year-old. So is there a specific content for each of them, or is it just the same?
For now, with this implementation, it's just generally the same. Most of our participants are in school, whether senior secondary school, junior secondary school. So our content is specifically targeted to students in schools. However, in the future, we would also explore those options to include more demographics as well.
Okay. Chiamaka, you spoke about emotional intelligence as one of your key takeaways, right?
Yeah.
What are the others?
Okay, one thing I'll call them teachers or instructors hammered on us was the fact that we should be grounded with soft skills. One of the soft skills was etiquette. That's what your manner says about you. How do you conduct yourself? You understand? So yes, etiquette, and there was also a sort of competition they had before we closed, and that was one of the topics my group chose was positioning the girl child for entrepreneurship and leadership. So I learned some key qualities that a female entrepreneur should have to be able to be successful in the world today.
How has that changed you since, before you went, you were in a particular way, as you said, you were not emotionally intelligent. That's just an example. How has that changed you? What's been the response or reaction of mom and dad since you go back?
Okay. Recently this summer, my friend and I decided to start a chin-chin business. Right, and that's sort of...
Pause. How old are you?
I'm 15.
And you have started chin-chin business?
Yes.
It's okay. Go ahead.
So, drawing from the lessons we learned, because we both attended the Lead Camp 2023, drawing from the lessons we learned on entrepreneurship, we're being to try to put that into practice. That's talking of qualities like integrity, keeping to time. Now, punctuality was something it wasn't part of the topics given, but then it's something we learned in the sense that the program is ending by 9. We have to be there before 9. So that taught me punctuality, taught me how to be disciplined, how to do things on time management. Yeah.
So when you got home and you now started doing things on time, mommy was shocked.
Yes. But she was proud, at least. She was like, right, this program is actually very nice because it has taught me something.
So mommy has stopped shouting. Long and short.
Yeah.
How about your siblings?
Actually, my siblings are in school.
Okay.
University, so.
Okay. So you are home alone?
Yeah.
Thank God. Union Bank has... you talked about the importance of gender enablement for your organization. And you've said that, SDG 5, is the important one for you.
It's one of the important ones.
One of the important ones. Why did you choose SDG 5 as one of the important ones out of 17?
Okay, so...
Because I know you don't only have female customers.
Yes, of course. So, all over the world, women and girls make up about 50% of the population. I mean, that's like almost half of the population, and I think that number alone is enough to focus on women and girls. And, we believe that training girls from a young age, empowered girls grow up to be high-achieving women, which is also important for the overall national development of the country. So by focusing on initiatives that sort of impact these young girls, we are able to see them grow into high-achieving leaders, and then that's also benefits the entire country. So I think that's one of the reasons why we focus on gender SDG 5 to promote gender equality.
What are some of those other initiatives of your organization aimed at promoting gender equality?
Okay, so we have, first of all, we have like a dedicated female proposition called Alpha. Alpha is our way of helping our female customers. Like you said, we don't have just female customers, but for these women, we know that it is sort of difficult to access funding. Any female business owner can tell you that they face a number of challenges with accessing funding, loans from the bank. So through Alpha, we're able to provide low intervention funding. We're able to provide low-cost business loans for them to help them, grow their business. We're also able to provide trainings and mentorship opportunities. So that's one of the ways we impact women. And we also partner with social impact organizations like JAN, Junior Achievement Nigeria, to implement Lead Camp, and that is targeted at young girls. We are also a member of the IFC NJX, that's the International Finance Corporation, through which we're able to get developmental loans from the from abroad to help implement it locally in Nigeria. And we are a signatory to the Women Economic Principles. Recently, we won 2 awards from IFC as part of our recognition in promoting gender equality. One of them is the Gender Leader Awards, and the other one is the awards that they recognize that we are able to push gender equality across the nation. So, yeah.
Well, I didn't ask you for the award, so you're gonna pay specially for that one. But let me come back to you, Kilali. Now, tell us about the target audience again. You spoke about it the other time. How would you describe them before and after the program?
So before the program, through the years that we've seen, the beneficiaries and participants of Lead Camp, before the program, they usually come in. They might not know a lot of things about etiquette. They might not know a lot of things about emotional intelligence, like Chimaka mentioned.
You are answering the program, yes. Well, speak to us as someone who interfaces with them. You can maybe cite example of one or two of them that they're almost always all over the place when they get in. And what's the transformation that you see when they're done?
When they get in, they're usually quite reserved or quite shy, right? Some of
young
them,
people.
Yes.
Shy.
So, yeah, you'll be shocked about how many shy, and they'll be a little quiet and they'll be in the corner. They won't really interact as much at the start of the program, and then you see them at the end of the program when they go through their presentations, and the person that was in the back that was really shy and didn't want to speak is now speaking on behalf of their group for their presentations. So you really see a personal transformation of, they see other women that they would look up to, whether the panelists or the facilitators in their sessions, and they are inspired to also gain that confidence. So we see an increase in their public speaking abilities. We see their increase of like Chimaka mentioned, emotional intelligence, and we also see them and follow them through their journey. Over the years, we've had so many alumni that are making waves in the economy, in the political space. One of our most notable alumni is Nkechi Eze Balogun, who's the founder of Ashwebi Bella, and we also have Odualinka Osoloye, who is the youth advisor at IREX, and many more amazing women who have come out of this program and are leaders today, whether they're leaders after years of the program or even leaders at their age in secondary school.
Is there a message for parents from Jan about this? Because sometimes, there are some people who believe that it will seem like parents push the responsibility of parenting to teachers. From your own experience and from interfacing with these children over the past 9 years, is there something parents need to know about their children? Because most of the time, these young people, they say they don't understand them.
Well, I would say that with programs like Lead Camp and other GA programs, we unlock the potential in children, right? This they have it in them, the confidence they have it in them, the skills they have it in them. So it's just for us to encourage them. And it's not just us at Junior Achievement Nigeria. We have partners like Union Bank who have been supporting us for years. We have other implementing partners. We have the schools as well. It's all, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Okay. And so it's all of us trying to unlock these potentials. But all of these qualities are already in those young girls.
Okay. Right. Chiamaka, what do you want to say to people your age who should also be part of this program?
Okay, I'd say we should know our worth as girls, right? And then we should try as much as possible to get mentors, someone to guide us, someone to lead us through, right? And I know we try to make ourselves as confusing or difficult to parents or teachers, but really simple. We just need a listening ear. And that listening ear can come in form of parents, teachers, or Junior Achievement Nigeria, most of the mentors who came to participate with us. So yeah, that's it.
So, in other words, getting your attention doesn't require a cane.
Yes.
Okay. Chiamaka Moses, 2023 Lead Camp participant, thank you for your time this morning. Thank you also to Jennifer Ubo, who is Lead External Communications at Union Bank. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having
as well me. As Kilali David West, Programs Officer, Junior Achievement Nigeria. Thank you so much for being here today. And all the best with what you do.
Thank you so much.
All right. Time to teach you how to allow your body to heal by itself. Be right back. Okay. Well, don't worry, you can continue that song, that music later, because I understand that exercising is also part of self-healing habits and practices. And dancing is an exercise, I'm told, but that's probably not what we're talking. Maybe we're going to talk about it. I don't know. Our guest is here. She'll be able to give us that. The human body, we understand, possesses an enormous, astonishing, and persistent capacity to heal itself. Disease generally occurs when we abuse our bodies or deprive them of basic requirements to keep us healthy over extended periods. The cell has an amazing ability to renew itself. The most fundamental unit of the human body is the cell, and all human life, we understand, originally begins as one cell. And we've been told on this program a couple of times that the human body has 37 trillion cells, at least. There are those who say it's more than 100 trillion cells, but generally, at least 37 trillion cells in the human adult body, comprising of body cells, blood cells, bone cells, brain cells, if I can say that. But this conversation will not be complete without speaking with our guest this morning, who will tell us the path that we need to take to self-healing. Yonda Agbeniga is here. She is going to take us through that. She's a lifestyle doctor. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
First of all, for those who are wondering, okay, so my body can heal itself, tell us how possible. Let's begin from there.
So I had this very big smile on my face when you were reading cells, tissues, systems, organ. I was like, oh, he's gone through biology this morning. So that's the starting point, actually. The body has a basic basic unit called the cell, which is the single unit that comprises of the nucleus, all that stuff in biology. They call them organelles. Organs in the cells are called organelles. And so that single unit, from it, let's start from the beginning when an egg and a sperm cell meet and they create that single cell, which breaks into 2 and breaks into 4 and then 8, 16, 32. That's how...
Until they become 37 trillion.
Yes. So you can say that fundamentally the cell has the capacity to divide, replicate, and multiply. The same way that divide replicate and multiply capacity, can also be used to reproduce another copy, can be used to heal, can be used to absorb nutrients from the environment, can also be used to absorb toxins from the environment. So now it depends on the milieu that you create around the cell that allows it to absorb whatever it has around it, to use it to build. So if you provide the right things for it, it will replicate, multiply, and divide with what you have provided. If it is deficient, it will replicate, divide, and multiply with what is deficient. If it is negative, it will replicate, multiply, and divide with whatever it has.
Okay, there's something that I have come to also learn in the course of, researching for programs and all. That we have, the cells are categorized to body cells, blood cells, bone cells, even brain cells. Are there different ways of approaching the self-healing habits for each of these categories?
Okay, so the truth about cells, because this looks more like a biochemistry class.
Well, because, people need to understand, that the whole of the body is like the body of a vehicle. There are screwdrivers screws that can almost not be seen with the naked eye.
Yeah.
And there are body parts of the vehicle that are that big, all right, that the hand cannot carry. There are some that the human being can carry by himself. There are some that require other, and the human body is pretty much the same as that, different components making a whole. So people don't even see their bodies in that way. So that's perhaps why, this disaggregation is necessary.
Okay, so I know why I said it looks like a biochemistry class. Biochemistry, that's the biology, that's the chemistry of life. Okay, so many people are like, oh, I don't need to know about it, I'm an accountant, but that's what makes up your body, so you need to have a basic knowledge of that. So before you have a full cell, you have what we call a stem cell. So it's a stem cell, when placed in the proper environment, now moves, that's the chemistry of that cell, now moves and differentiates into that body part. So if it's a stem cell for a bone, it just grows into being a bone. If it's a stem cell for a liver, it just grows into a liver. And because of this amazing capacity within the cell, that's why it's able to differentiate into those various body parts. More so when supplied with the right nutrients, right environment, and right milieu. Milieu is the environment. That cell will pick up from the environment and replicate that condition. So you can have a cancer cell replicating and self-dividing. Instead of replicating a new cell, will produce another new cancer cell, because the genetic material available for it is that of a cancerous cell. And so, I think it's really an exciting topic, talking about self-healing. The body really does have a capacity to heal itself. So when you have a cut on your hand and you sleep, by the time you wake up in the morning, you have the fibrin strands, those black stuff that has covered it. That's one of the healing body functions of the cells, because from that stem cell stage, it has migrated into the bone cells, liver cells, brain cells, which you spoke about. And then that inherent ability is still there. So when you have an injury or you have a cut, your body goes into that memory area, picks up, what we need right now is healing, and starts to heal. And when it looks at, this leg is damaged, what we need to do is produce new cells to cover up this wound and heal it. That's why you see it heal gradually. But, there's a school of thought that feels that, the body can handle anything. All right. For you to self-heal, you must provide the right physical environment, the right nutrients, and then it is dependent on the amount of stress that you have given it. If you keep abusing that body part or that body beyond its repair ability, everything has an elastic limit, and that's what we abuse, that fact that, it's going to heal, I'm going to detoxify, the body can handle it. No. At a certain point, the body cannot handle it. So there are different things that you could use to introduce stress. You could introduce mental and emotional stress, which will cause a trigger, creating a negative pH in your body, and that's where the alkaline and acidic people come in. Once you have emotional stress, trauma, sorrow, heartbreak, whatever, could be from anywhere, you have created a release of negative neurotransmitters into your body, okay? Then when you introduce chemicals and toxins, either orally, from your food, as a pill or whatever way you introduce it, or topically, either way, that environment has become negative. It can only take so much. Like I always say, introduce a lot of acid through drinks to your kidneys. After a while, they will just stop filtering properly and start retaining stones. And then, pop, you hear there's a kidney stone. So I always say that physical abuse, that's mental problems, stress from chemicals, and then maybe trauma, maybe like accidents and all that. It depends on how much of that damage is done to it. Then it will decide whether I can self-heal or not. And that goes to the point where people say that, oh, you don't need to supplement, you don't need to take, oh no, your body can handle that. I mean, you get everything from food, really? You've cooked your food and killed off all the nutrients in the vegetables anyway, so you're taking more of the roughage in. So also, you don't, how many oranges are you going to do to get your daily required amount for vitamin C that your body does not produce, which prevents you from sickness? So I've always said it that getting the right nutrients, it's important. If you're going to get those cells to replicate and to heal, it's not only for you to pop a pill, because you need to provide the right environment for that cell to replicate. You pop a pill, you shut down a pathway, and that pain signal is killed, but the other pathways that has been shut are not working. And you want the body to self-heal. How? You have altered like 4 pathways. I think the fact that my background is steeped also in biochemistry helps me understand all these things, because the body works with pathways. If you shut down the pathway for self-healing, the body is not going to heal itself. If you introduce so much chemical, like I say, disease means dis-ease. Your body, that body part is not in ease. And it could be a body part, it could be a cell, it could be an organ, it could be a tissue, whatever. And once you introduce those external forces, disrupt the milieu, contrary to what is the general belief in the industry, oh, the body can handle it. Seriously? You keep abusing it and you expect it to handle it, you have a part to play.
So what is the part now? I mean, you've talked about the things that, so how do we begin to reverse this trend in order for the body to do what it is built to do by itself? It's not like a vehicle that, you know, can heal itself. The human body is a machine that comes with regenerative forces of its own. So how do we help the body do that so that we ourselves can be at ease?
Okay, so like, I think I always like to answer this question by, you know how they ask you, what should I do? And then the person says, what should you not do? Okay. So how do we get disease? Like basically 3 ways. Number 1 is genetic predisposition. 3 ways. How do you get a disease? Maybe a diabetes. Either you are genetically predisposed to it. That means your DNA, memory, the memory cells and all that. You have this, dad is diabetic, granddad is diabetic. I mean, it's almost a written scientific fact that the next generation will be diabetic. That's genetic predisposition. The DNA, memory cells, all that carry that thing, that oncogenes or whatever it is. 1. Secondly, you could have, now for genetic predisposition, I'll quickly say that the fact that there's a genetic predisposition does not mean that there needs to be an expression. So if you do the proper things, if you know that, oh, dad is diabetic, granddad is diabetic, uncles are diabetic, then that's when you know that you need to edit your lifestyle. That's not when you want to go binge drinking or even having a drinking spree, or you want to eat all the wrong things that will predispose you to diabetes. That's when everybody is doing this. You know that, oh, mine, I don't have the luxury, I want to, you know, and then you stay away from it. And any other medical intervention you need, you need to get it. Secondly, it's toxic overload. You have loaded yourself with all the things that should not be there. So,
for instance?
There are plenty of things. Junk food, chemicals in food, food loaded with chemicals. And I heard someone say foodless foods. It's food, but it's trash. There's nothing in it. Empty calories that you don't need, you know. So you have to be intentional. Then fourth is nutritional deficiencies. You're putting in nutrients. You are deficient of nutrients. The body does not recognize eba and rice and stuff like that. What it recognizes is proteins, vitamins, carbohydrates and stuff. That's what it recognizes. So once you put it in, oh, this protein picks it, the rest, oh, this is roughage, and you go to the loo to get it out. So if those nutritional things are not there, it would not be able to function. So a disease will pop in. So this genetic predisposition, nutritional deficiencies, and then toxic overload. So if you have it, if you've overloaded yourself with toxins, push it out. If you have nutritional deficiencies, then put in all the nutrients that you need to put in. The final thing I would add to that, it's new, basically, that's not in the regular school, is energy. Let me give an example why you need force fields in your body. One, if you're off food for some time, you would survive, right? If you're off water for some time, you would survive. But if you're in surgery and that force field that they use to measure your heart rates, once that electromagnetic force field flattens out, the person is dead instantly. So that's where energy, force fields, electromagnetism, it's really much of a new field. But you see, when people want to die, when they're in movies, you see them taking those two electrodes to jumpstart the heart. That's because you don't want the electrical circuitry of the body to shut down. Once it cuts off, the person is dead instantly. So energy, frequency, electromagnetism, it's a new field, it's a new phase, it's a new, it's important in the body.
How do you put? It's not like you're going to touch electricity.
No,
is it? Exactly.
You use what we call it's new. It's like integrative medicine in which you use pulsed electromagnetic fields, infrared, all that stuff to get your mitochondria charged. Once the mitochondria, that thing inside the cell that powers it, once it starts losing energy, that's when you see malaise. You see people are dull. When your mitochondrial energy is low, that's why you see, for each cell has what we call electrical charge. It's called energy medicine, actually. Each cell has a voltage. It's called, it's a millivolts, about 70 millivolts. When you're sick and you have malaise, your cell voltage has dropped to about 50.
In other words, you need generator.
Yes.
To put on the lights.
Yes.
In your body.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm hearing that for the first time. But you know, all of these things you're saying, thankfully we are talking about all these in the lifestyle segment. All of this definitely has a way of, you know, getting better only if we factor in a different lifestyle pathway.
Yes.
How? You've talked about what we take in. Before you go to those lifestyle patterns, how do medications help or harm this self-healing thing that you talked about? Because, I mean, it's only natural once anyone is having a headache, the first thing you want to do is get something to talk about it, to do to it. How does that help or harm? I've heard that they call something drug abuse, and it doesn't have to be cocaine or heroin. But some people, the moment they have some kind of thing, oh, I used this medication the last time, let me use it again.
Okay, so the The first thing I would say is that sometimes you need a detoxification
of your body from those medications.
Yes. Okay. So, like, most times pain is a signal. You have a headache. It's a signal that something is wrong. Like, you have people who have what we call angina. They have heart problems. They don't know. And then one day they just say, my heart. And then you feel something just tightened in your heart and released you. And you go, oh, that's passed. You know, that's a horrible signal. That's a very bad signal. That's a signal that the heart is not getting oxygen. And the cells on that side are about to die. So they gave you a warning. And so you go in like, oh my, so what do I need? You pop a pill and the pain goes. But that blockage is still there. And it could lead to two things. It could lead to a TIA, that's a transient ischemic attack, which is a stroke. Or it could lead to a full stroke, you know. But you know the body will give you that signal for a while before it decides that I want to go into stroke. So you take medications and you shut down that signal and you don't do anything about it. You take that medication for 5 years. You didn't do anything about it, about that blockage. You know, so that's where some form of wisdom is important. Like, you have a headache. What's wrong? Am I dehydrated? What's wrong? Am I lacking water, or I'm stressed? Do I need to sleep? You know, so that's the role in that. So sometimes after you have overloaded yourself with some of these things, then you need to do, that's the importance of detoxifying. You need to run detox series on yourself once in a while. Clean your colon, clean your detoxify, do a sauna, get those toxins, waste products out of your body, sweat it out, you know, get charged. It's the truth. Get charged, get a PMF or whatever it is, and connect yourself to the charges so that your mitochondria picks up energy at any time. And of course, another way to do that is definitely the exercising, because you need oxygen. The reason, like that TIA in which the person had that, it's called angina pectoris. Getting exercise, getting oxygen through exercise, and I've always said that, yes, exercise is good. It is not because you want to have six packs or low, flattened abs. It's because you need your heart to work, to pump oxygen, to circulate through the body. So when you get oxygen through those places, those cells that were threatening you to die get oxygen. And that's one of the regimens we need to add, apart from deficiencies that we need to put, toxins we need to get out through detox. As in, it's amazing, detoxification is important. You know, we also need to get oxygen and nutrients in.
So you're saying essentially that detox is one way of helping the body to get back its mojo, as they say.
Yes.
Get back its groove of self-healing. Yeah. But then don't also forget that there are countless ways that detox have been recommended to people. Which one would you recommend? I'm sorry, I'm not asking you to advertise anything. I'm just saying, because there are some who look, okay, to detox, you have to do this, you have to do that. How do people, what's the, I don't know, basic way of detoxing that doesn't also bring harm to the body?
Okay, so initially I detested that word detoxification when I was growing up, because I just felt it was quackery. So sometimes you have overloaded yourself with a lot of things and your body can't deal. A good example, if you have a mercury overload or an aluminum overload, aluminum and those things, heavy metals, are stored in fat. So you could carry them for 5 years. Okay?
So when you talk about aluminum, it's a completely different picture is coming to people's mind.
Aluminum is found in your roll-ons, in some of your roll-ons, and there are researches that say that aluminum is contraindicated or indicated in breast cancer. You know, so when you have heavy metals in your body, mercury, aluminum, lead, all that, you can't get them out yourself. And the thing about them is they stay in the body and go to irritate the cells around. So you are irritated, you're having sinus problems and all that. You don't know why your sinuses are blocked. That's your nose problems, you and all that. So you don't know, but you have you have a heavy metal overload, and so you are irritated and all that. You can't place your finger. You could do 10,000 tests, and you would not find that this is because you accept that maybe your liver function may be a little bit up and down. So why I brought that is there are different models of detoxification. You go into the toilet in the morning to pee and to poo and all that. That is a form of regular body cleaning out. Your body is cleaning out by itself. But there are different models. You might need to do a heavy metal cleanse. You might need to do a colonic, get the stuff that has been hidden in between all those knots in the intestine. You know the intestine is a loop. So there are some times that you have stuff hidden in all those loops, and they can stay there for years, really, you know. So you need to get all those cleaned. Then you can do a full body sauna in which you're just out and sweating out all the things that need to go out through your skin pores. So there are different methods. It depends on what condition it's indicated in your body. So if it is a heavy metal, if you're having brain fog, like I have a friend who said she called her boss sweetheart. she was having brain fog. So if you have that, it's a different kind of detox program you would need, because apparently your body can't deal with some of those heavy metals by themselves. So there are different types.
Okay. Because, you know, there are different types, there are different fake types.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what scared me. That's why I'm asking that question. Because there are those who will say, okay, there is one particular, if you put your leg in certain liquid, you know, some liquids are going to, you know, go into the water and do that. That is detox. Is that? You don't know.
Well, some people do it,
okay,
you know, and they have, the thing I always say to people is once you understand the chemistry behind something, then you're able to you are able to decipher what it is. Apparently, I tried to read it up, and I know what they do is try to create electrolysis, try to create a circuit, increase the charge in the water because you have skin pores. Okay, increase the charge in the water, create currents and charges, ions, so that the concentration in the water is higher than the concentration, the pH in your blood. So because you have pores at the tip of your feet, you have those osmosis, the things that shouldn't be there, free radicals, ions. It's actually an ionic detox. You have ions pulling out through those pores. So if you create a high concentration in the water, then you have a lower concentration in your blood because you add salts and then you create electrolysis through the array, and there's a lot of ions in it. It's really concentrated, and there's a charge, there's an electric charge, maybe in amperes, you know, and then the concentration in the body is a lot lower. That would help you with heavy metal detox. It would pull out free radicals, ions, and charges. It's not going to go to your colon and pull out fecal matter, neither will it. But you know those free radicals, and then you have a pump of hydrogen being pumped into your body. You have hydrogen peroxide being optimized in your body, which kills things which you endogenously produce. I mean, if you read the chemistry and it makes sense to you, then you go for it if you're comfortable with it.
Okay. How does nutrition help self-healing?
Like I said earlier, vitamins, minerals, trace minerals are very important in the body. The body recognizes carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, nutrients, and all that. So I want to build a new cell. I need magnesium. This guy is deficient in magnesium. And I'm already building the cell up. Just ignore it. And then it produces a weak cell. So that's why you need to have all your nutrients in the body, your vitamins,
So that's why there is what they call balanced diet.
Yes.
Because the body has different needs at any given time.
Exactly.
So when there is a balanced diet, the different parts of the body will take what's their own.
Exactly.
So the body has a way of collecting its own palliatives.
Yes. Yes.
In the food that you eat.
Yes.
Okay, so are there specifics here? You just spoke about magnesium deficiency now. What are the things? How do you know you are deficient in one particular thing?
Okay, so let me give this brief story. You know how vitamin C was discovered, okay? In the era of the Queen, Her Royal Majesty, the Queen, you know, they call it the HRM ships, the fleet of the Queen. When they leave land, I mean, and they still have supplies, oranges and stuff, everybody's fine. Then when they get to sea and everything has, way back, I think in the 1700s, way back, when their supplies run out, then they found out that the sailors were all having scurvy. You know, scurvy. And then when they get back to land, biofruits, fresh supplies, oranges and stuff, then the thing goes, when they're back in the sea again and they have only salt water and all that, then they pick up scurvy again. And that led to the discovery of vitamin C. I don't want to be quoted because I need to get the research right, the data right, but it is said that for every vitamin deficiency, that there are about 72 or so diseases that can be linked with it. So with each deficiency of maybe magnesium, vitamins, whatever, there are diseases linked with it. Heart health, magnesium is definitely deficient. CoQ10 is definitely deficient. Arginine is definitely deficient. And that's why I always say guided nutritional supplementation, because you need a nutritionist who is what her salt to help you with this. With all due respect, you need someone to guide you through it. You don't just say, magnesium, arginine, and you're going to end up with a large box of
medications.
Yes, and that's not going to help you because you'll be tired. So they know how to advise you on whatever deficiencies. Oh, there's a heart health problem. Oh, there's whatever. This is the side you're doing but this is the other side you need to add to it to get your balance, because everything is supposed to work hand in hand.
You spoke about exercising the other time. Apparently, it's not just nutrition. It's like what you're saying to me is it's a combo of activities.
Yes.
There's the place for food, there's a place for medications, there's a place for exercising, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying. Yes. So the challenge then would be, for people, would be that of how to apply the proportions. Is there a guide that you can provide?
There is a guide, actually, and I'm just going to say this, and I'll give this guide. And I'll not limit it to just proportions. I'm going to include time into it.
Okay.
There's a process that your body goes through in the mornings, and that will guide us properly. You know, there's a process and it will help us have a paradigm shift on what we have been told over the years. And sometimes majority is not always, you know. In the mornings when you wake up and you get up from your bed, you head straight for the loo to ease yourself, right? Most people do. Or that's to pee most of the times, or maybe sometimes you just want to stay in the toilet and or bathroom and have a bowel movement. That's your body saying, I walked overnight trying to heal you. Like you have the cuts in your hand, it is overnight that you see those brown things come up. So your body was working overnight when you were sleeping to rejuvenate you. So in the morning, you have that detox process. You're going to pee everything out. You're using the bathroom. At that morning time, that's not the time to eat breakfast like a king. Yes, that's the time to turbocharge your detox mechanism. That's the time to take in your smoothies, your juices, your green teas, fluids, to turbocharge your detox. Recall that if you take 5 wraps of fufu and eba or ewa going in the morning, try it. By 11 p.m., you are groggy. You want to sleep. You're sleeping on your buses or you're sleeping on your desk. Because what you have done is you have done it, you know, in music, they call it contrapunta. You have confused the body. It's trying to clean out from all the work you did in the night. You have said, oh, leave those detox, all those debris from healing the body. Leave it aside, leave it. Please focus on the main pathway of digestion. So he leaves it there and you start to digest. It does not, it shifts the major activity to digestion. And so it churns all the resources to digestion and you get tired and that's why you want to sleep. So in the morning, that's when to eat your basic things like oats, oatmeals, things that are easily digestible. For the Nigerian audience, that's when you want to do your pap. That's when you want to do your light meals, just to get your nutrients to carry you for the day. By 12, that's when your body can assimilate nutrients. That's when you load up with your eba, fufu, rice, and everything. Because your body is going to be in the assimilation model at that time. As you assimilating, that's when you do your ewa and everything you want to do at that time.
All the heavy stuff.
Yes, as in have fun between 12 and 6. By 6 to 7, you're gradually shifting to the rejuvenation state. And that's when, because if you don't sleep, your body doesn't heal. So your body is about to sleep. You don't need to load it up with more 6 wraps of fufu. So that's when you need to go your light meals.
What if that's the fellow's first and only meal for the day?
So you train your body. Stop confusing your biological clock. You train yourself.
Madam, people fast.
Yes.
You know, Ramadan time, people fast.
There are exceptions.
Lenten time, people fast.
Yes.
What's the exception?
There are exceptions.
We have already distorted the clock for 30 days.
So you want to do self-healing, then you start following the clock. It's called it's a concept called the DAR cycle: detox, assimilation, rejuvenation. If you do not sleep, your body will not rejuvenate, because that's when it does the self-healing. You know, so that afternoon time is the best time to heavy eat and all that. By 7, you should be winding down. I know it's a very difficult model to approach in, and especially in the city where we live in. But by evening, you're having your light meals like your salads and little rice in addition, and a lot of nutrients, vitamins from your smoothies and juices, moi, you know, something like.
Some people will have very light meal in the night and wake up in the morning like they haven't eaten for 30 days.
Yes.
You are very well aware of that.
Yes, so because you want to push out. See, at the evening time, you are loading up for that rejuvenation work the body wants to do. It's going to be healing all your wounds, all your injuries overnight. Give it the required, it's simple science. Give it the required nutrients.
To you, it is simple science. But, you know, speak to this. There are people who, well, you help us understand it, who maybe had an incident in the day. They didn't feel any pain. Or they had an accident some time back. They didn't feel any pain. And they just slept and wake up the following morning feeling intense pain in that particular part of the body. Why are you laughing?
It's simple science.
Oh, tell us this science.
Okay, so you have an internal injury and you are numb. Your body is numbed for the pain. So
we've applied embrocation.
There's something called internal hemorrhaging. If an artery or something is blocked and the body was trying so hard, like we have just spoken, to self-heal. And I mean, this whole bleeding thing is beyond it. And then that's when you start feeling the pain. So that's why if you have an accident or you have a fall, you should never assume that everything is fine. Get checked.
Okay. All right. Well, we have to thank you very much for this. We spent a little longer than we planned to too. But thank you so much for your time this morning, Yonda Beniga. But a very quick one. I told you we had our guest, our artist of the week, but unfortunately he also has been affected by the traffic from getting here on time. We've been able to successfully lock him down virtually this morning. So let me just go straight to it and have a conversation with him. Everyone calls him Alibaba. If you want to know his true name, Google it. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We have very little time, but we have to keep this short. How are you this morning? Alibaba, please unmute. We can't hear you. Can you hear me? You are yet to unmute, please. We can't hear you. Okay. We are unable to hear you now, so it will seem like it is time for us to say our goodbyes. But before I let you go, just a very, very quick one to young people. There is an assumption that some people have that it's like young people believe that they can't die or that they can't fall sick. Is there a guide for them in this self-healing talk?
Yeah, for younger people, I think this is the best time. You know, I'm more of a lifestyle and wellness focused person. So the thing is, at 30, 40, 50, we see quite a lot of people who are coming down with what we call lifestyle conditions. Lifestyle diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension.
Hitherto, it was for much older people, right?
Yeah. Even cancers, you know. So there are things that you could have done over the years. Like I think there was a time I saw a 38-year-old who had prostate enlargement. Now the thing is, the things you do now, at the end of the day, would ultimately show up in your 40s and your 50s. So this is the time to build the right milieu. This is the time to self-train yourself. Yeah, you can truly, they can get away with a lot of things right now. So this is the time to cut down on your carbonated stuff, drinks and all that. This is the time to go on moderation so that you're used to living and eating right and doing the right things. This is the time to get used to brisk walking, exercising, jumping jacks and all that. So that when you are in your 30s, your 50s, I mean, it's part of your lifestyle. You know, oh, these are the things I should eat, these are the things I should eat, these are the things I should eliminate. So you have it at the beginning. This is the best time,
okay.
You know.
Just this one. I mean, you talked about the body healing overnight and developing something. How about the situation where the body actually is unable to heal? I hear what they call, is it vascular ulcer or something like that? How about that kind of situation? What happens?
So, like I said at the beginning of the program, the body can self-repair and self-heal, depending only on the amount of stress that it has encountered. So depending on the amount of stress caused by the amount of deficiency, by the amount of deficiency. So it's been deficient all this while. Now you have a big ulcer or a big leg ulcer, which is a leg injury, and there's nothing to heal. A good example was during COVID. It was said that people with existing
preconditions,
yes, did poorly with it. It's simple. Okay. The existing immunity which you had, or which the person had at that time, maybe a diabetic, was to deal with the diabetic sores and the diabetic injuries and the kidney problems and the nephropathies and all the eye problems and all the high blood pressure that came with diabetes. You now added an extra aggressive coronavirus on it.
Okay.
There's no backup to defend.
Sounds like you're saying, look, to self-heal, you have to start early. You're a lifestyle and wellness expert. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Truly appreciate it. Well, that's Sunrise this morning and this week. It has been quite a week, and we all want a better country, and you most certainly have your own role to play in it. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye for now. Oh, I understand Okay. Well, anyway, see you again.